I set the ledger on my counter and felt the smear of ink under my palm. Outside the duplex held steady 2 blue doors, catching late sun while something inside me slipped. Owning it had been a correction after years of being overlooked. Then came my parents' announcement my brother's family would move in free. My security reassigned without my consent. Since when did my work belong to someone else? Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, like, subscribe and listen, because next part changes everything. When I first walked through the place, I counted the steps to each window. It was an old Midwestern brick with modest bones, 2 stacked flats mirrored over a central beam. Nothing fancy. A practical house on a practical street where mailboxes leaned a little from winter, and everyone knew the garbage day by the sound of lids. I bought it after the divorce because I needed something that would not move out from under me. The left unit became my home. The right was my plan for staying afloat. Inside my half-narrow hallway room for hooks and a bench, hardwood floors that clicked under heels. The living room window looked into the maples so close the leaves brushed the glass when it rained. I hung sheer curtains because privacy without daylight felt like giving up. The kitchen cabinets were the color of old cream. The oven ran hot. I learned where to set pans so cookies browned evenly and cornbread didn't come out with a scorch mark at the edge. A ceiling fan ticked a soft rhythm over the table, and in winter, the radiator sang. It was an imperfect music that sounded like a second heartbeat. I made a budget as neat as a church bulletin. Mortgage on the first, insurance on the 5th, water and gas split between units, a maintenance envelope labeled in blue marker. I kept a what-if fund in a clear jar just to watch it grow. Cut grass on Saturdays, clean gutters in October, replace weather stripping before the wind found the seams. I worked 4 days a week at a small clinic taking vitals, calming people who were scared of needles, keeping the front desk from slipping into chaos. On Tuesdays, I volunteered at the library shelving returns and recommending paperbacks to anyone who asked for something quiet but not boring. I liked the order. I liked the routine. I liked that the duplex asked for care and gave steadiness back. Neighbors made the place feel held. Mrs. Beale next door had a lemon tree in a pot and a soft spot for strays. She slipped me brown eggs from a coop behind her garage and stories from her teaching days. Across the street, a retired firefighter named Joe watered his lawn at the same hour after dinner. He'd wave the hose like a baton when a song he loved came on, and the arc of water flashed under sunset in a way that reminded me that simple can be spectacular. I was not lonely. I was between things. The right-hand unit covered most of the mortgage when it was occupied. Tenants came and went. A teacher who baked on Sundays and left me plates wrapped in foil. A young couple who loved plants and turned the back stoop into a jungle. I screened people carefully. Good references, steady income, a lease that protected us both. When it sat empty, I tightened my belt. Soup stretched. Lights off in rooms I wasn't using. I did not complain. This was the bargain I made to own the floor under my feet. My parents liked to say I had a head for survival. It sounded like praise until you pressed on it. Survival meant endurance, not celebration. Survival did not ask for respect, it asked for less. My brother Mark did not have to learn that language. He had a way of walking into a room as though the room had been waiting for him to arrive. He sold insurance, tried real estate, thought about opening a gym. The details never stuck. The story did born to lead. He and his wife Taryn had 2 children, one with a cowlick that insisted on pointing east. The kids were easy to love. I babysat when I could. I bought them library cards and taught them how to hold a book so the spine didn't split. If you're asking what life felt like before the plan, it felt workable. It felt earned. I had a chipped ceramic cup I rescued from my mother's giveaway box. It had a hairline crack in the glaze and a small painted sprig of clover. I drank coffee from it morning and night. I liked the way the handle sat in my hand, like it knew me. The cup came from a fair our family used to visit when I was a girl, the same fair where my uncle once lifted me to touch a stuffed bear that wasn't soft at all. The cup was my anchor. It was not valuable. It mattered anyway. I believed that what you build is yours, not because you deserve more than anyone else, because you carried it up the stairs. Tradition covered our family like a quilt with squares sewn by different hands. Thanksgiving was at my parents' place in a ranch on the edge of town where the garage smelled like oil and grass clippings year-round. My mother baked pies the kind with foil strips across the crust to stop the edges from burning. My father carved chest-out arms, sure the expert of a task no one else was invited to try. I did the salads, the rolls, the gravy if things went sideways. Mark told stories. He could make a Tuesday sound like an adventure. Taryn lined up little shoes by the door. Small changes arrive without announcement. The year before everything broke open, I was at the kitchen sink when I heard my mother say to Taryn, "Those little ones need stairs, a yard, a place to run." Her voice was pitched for privacy, but sound travels in rooms filled with steam. It hooked me and pulled. Later, my father dried his hands and asked casual how long I planned to keep the right side empty. He asked like a man asking what dessert we would serve, as if the choice had already been decided, and he just needed the name. Mark joked that his apartment was daylight robbery. He laughed when he said it. I watched his face. The laugh came late. He complained about the school district, about the drive across town, about neighbors who blasted music on weeknights. Taryn said the kids slept better when they were at my house, the air quieter, the street slower. She held up a school flyer from my area and circled the art program with a pen. Imagine, she said, if they could walk to a place like this. At my niece's birthday, she handed me a drawing. 2 square houses with 2 blue doors, a sun that took up half the sky. Stick figures labeled with our names. The ones under my roof held hands. The ones under the other roof were labeled us. I kissed the top of her head and said it was beautiful. Something in my stomach pinched anyway. Christmas brought another stitch. I offered to host. My duplex had the space. I had folding tables, extra chairs, the skill to make a tight place feel generous. My mother waved it off. "Too much work for you," she said, though work was what I was good at. Mark added that the kids would do better over there. He meant their apartment, he said. He meant any place that wasn't mine. Favors began to tilt. My father borrowed my truck and returned it with the seat adjusted and my radio presets overwritten. My mother asked if she could leave extra boxes in my basement just for a while. She stacked them in a corner and then another, not malicious, just assuming capacity. "You have room," she'd say, smiling, as if there could never be a version of me that did not. If families have weather, ours had been cloudy for years with occasional breaks of blue. This new front was warmer. It moved different. It asked a question without using words. "What belongs to you that we can fold back into us?" I started to answer in my head, if not out loud. "My name on a deed is not a suggestion. My door is not a community project. That chipped cup is not a sign I will always drink from what you hand me." One night, my mother called after dinner and said, "You always wanted to live near family." I said, "I do." She said, near, like next door." Her voice was bright, the kind that made you nod without thinking. "We've got ideas," she added, and the word ideas landed like a suitcase that had been packed without telling me what was inside. On the Saturday, it happened I carried deviled eggs into my parents' living room because I did not like to arrive empty-handed. The couch cushions had been pumped up with a vacuum tool, so everything looked company fresh. A tray of cold cuts sat on the coffee table next to a folder. Mark and Taryn were there already. My father had put on the face he wore for instructions. My mother folded her hands like church was about to begin. "We've been talking," she said, and my chest tightened. That phrase in our house was a prelude and a verdict. "We think it makes perfect sense for Mark and Taryn to move into your duplex. The kids need space. Schools are better out there. You have a whole unit sitting open. It is the right thing. Family should help family." I didn't sit all the way. I kept a hand on the back of the chair as if I might need to move. "At what rent?" I asked. Taryn looked at Mark. Mark looked at my father. My father cleared his throat. "They can't do full rent right now," he said. "Like a concession the world now owed them? We figured no rent until they get on their feet." "Free," I said. The word stuck to my tongue. "You're asking me to gift them my income?" "Not a gift," my mother said, smiling like a teacher trying to keep a child from melting down. "Family cooperation. Think of it as all of us carrying the load." My hand on the chair tightened. "Then you'll cover my shortfall." Silence is a kind of answer. My father's mouth flattened. My mother's gaze shifted to the folder. Mark opened it and fanned out brochures for the elementary school art room, a map of the playground by the swings. "It's perfect," he said. "You always wanted the kids close." He placed a paper on top like a flourish. "Unless he added eyes on me, you'd prefer to sell the building into the family trust. We figured $1 and we assume the mortgage. That way, it stays in the family." There it was. A choice carved to look like mercy. Let us live there for free unless you sell us your house for nothing at all. And unless that was not a lifeline, but a loop. I sat. I placed my palms flat on my knees because they were shaking. The rent from that unit pays the bills that let me keep this place. It is not spare. It is not optional. It is how I live. My father leaned back, eyes cool. "You're single," he said. "You're not raising kids. You don't need what they need." Some sentences rearrange the furniture in a room. You can still walk, but nothing is where you left it. "I need what I need," I said, and the words sounded small, only because they were the first ones I dared. My mother leaned forward. "We only want peace. It would be easier if you would stop making things heavy. Agree, and we keep this from becoming a whole situation." "We're not threatening," she added with that bright voice again. "We're asking. Unless you want a rift, we can't fix. A free apartment, unless I wanted to be the kind of daughter who ruins holidays. A sale for $1, unless I wanted to be the kind of sister who leaves children to struggle." "I hear you," I said. "I do." I picked up the tray of cold cuts and moved it aside so I could see the folder without touching it. I am not agreeing. The meeting ended in the way such meetings do, with paper left on a table and people moving on to safer topics. "How was work?" my mother asked, as if my no were a nap I would wake from and reconsider. I carried the deviled eggs back to my car. I forgot the Tupperware lid. I drove home with the scent of paprika in the air and a loneliness I do not recommend. At my kitchen table, I poured hot water into the chipped cup and did not drink it. I listened to the house. The radiator tapped. A car rolled by with bass low enough to rattle the windows. The right-hand unit sat empty, blinds up floors, clean corners ready. I could feel it. I could feel all the work I had done to keep it ready, like a hum in the walls. I placed the ledger beside the cup and ran my finger down the column for rent received last year. The numbers were not a theory. They were a rope. The next week played out in longer hours. Movement slowed. People sounded as if they were speaking from the other end of a hallway. I kept doing what I knew how to do. I counted syringes at the clinic, checked blood pressures, smiled at an old man who brought peppermint to staff, and called us angels in a voice that had not lost its Mississippi. I balanced the drawer, ran end-of-day totals, wiped the desk down with a lemon cloth. I was steady where I could be. Nights I set bills on the table and spread the repair receipts like cards. New toilet flapper, $22. Roof patch, $88 plus tax. Furnace service, $198 with a discount because I called before the first frost. Last year's water heater, a bigger bite. I wrote dates on sticky notes and lined them up. When the mind wants to spin numbers, make a decent anchor. I pulled out old journals and went back to the day I made the down payment. My handwriting tilted tall with adrenaline. I had written, "This is the first thing I've owned that could not be carried out under someone else's arm." I did not cry over that sentence. I let it stand up on the page like a person. At the library, I reshelved a box of donations. Someone had given away a book on landlord basics from the 80s, outdated forms, sensible advice. It said the quiet part out loud. Agreements protect relationships. Make one before promise becomes demand. I copied a page of notes, screening questions I already used. Lease clauses I might adopt, late fees, entry notices, heat requirements by date. It was dry reading. It hardened my spine. I tried drafting an email to my parents. I wrote the subject line 3 ways about the duplex. My decision. Please read. I explained the math. I explained the mortgage is due whether there is a birthday party or not. I explained that free rent equals free labor equals no, I cannot. I explained that if they wanted to help Mark, they could. They could do it with their money, not with my roof. I did not press send. Not because I doubted the content, because I knew the reply would come as a phone call, and the call would come with airless words like ungrateful and stubborn, and why do you make life so hard? I made a second draft for Mark and Taryn. It was kinder. It offered a path. 6 months at reduced rent, subject to proof of income, then full rent with a proper lease and deposit. The kind of offer I would extend to strangers who could become neighbors. I did not send that either. Not yet. It would be heard as an insult while everyone was high on the simplicity of free. In the meantime, I listed the unit. I wrote an honest description. 2-bed, 1-bath, upstairs flat. Sunlight in the kitchen in late morning. Laundry in basement. Storage cage included. No smoking. 1 cat okay with deposit. I took photos that showed rooms at their actual size. I posted the rent at market rate because that was what the numbers required. I waited. The first open house drew a teacher with new glasses, who ran her hand along the windowsill like she was reading Braille. A man who worked nights and wanted quiet Saturday mornings. A retired couple downsizing, who asked if the stairs creaked. Everyone took off their shoes at the door. Everyone said thank you. No one felt like a fight I would have to win. I stood in the empty kitchen after they left and counted 10 breaths. I asked myself the question I had been avoiding. At what cost would I keep the peace my mother demanded? The answer arrived like water finding the lowest place. Not at the cost of myself. Sometimes the past goes hunting, and sometimes you take a flashlight to the attic and do the hunting yourself. I opened the cedar chest, lifted out photographs, letters, a handful of report cards, a paper program from a church Christmas pageant, where I played a star and stood still until my calves shook. A graduation card slid loose. Inside, my parents' message, "We're proud of you. Mark will do great things, and you will too, in your own way. In your own way." I had underlined it back then with a sarcastic flourish. Reading it now, the words didn't sting so much as confirm a theme. Some people are groomed for applause. Some are groomed to clap. An older letter, blue lines, black ink, my mother's handwriting, smaller and stricter than it is now. "Don't let money make you hard," she had written. "Property will disappoint you. People will not." I touched the dent in the paper where her pen had pressed. The sentence did not hold for me. Money had not made me hard. Money had made me safe. Property had been a faithful partner so far. People had been a mix. I folded the letter and put it back. I was not angry with the woman who wrote it. She was repeating a story she believed would protect me. It protected her instead. Under everything lay the flyer from the day I found the duplex online, the one I printed at the clinic between patients. Photo of the front under a washed-out sky. Price that made me exhale and then inhale fast. My notes in the margin ask about roof age, check foundation, find out if knob and tube. On the back, I had written the little sums that proved I could make it work if I tried. I put that poem of math in the binder I had begun for this new fight. Tabs labeled deed, insurance, repairs, rent history, receipts. I slid a blank tab in and wrote family in thin, black capital letters because I needed a place to file what I could not control. The chipped cup had been my daily companion for 10 years. I washed it and dried it and set it on the counter and then did nothing. It stayed until after midnight. I carried it to the chest and placed it on a folded towel, not to erase it, just to rest it. Without it, the counter looked like a mouth missing a tooth. I could live with that gap while I worked. I walked the neighborhood at the hour when porch lights come on and families sit on stoops and talk about nothing important. The street bent toward the park. The baseball diamond held a game of kids too small to see over their gloves. I stood at the chain link and let the sound of a good hit move through me like a promise. I do not need them to choose me, I thought. I need to choose me. Back home, I wrote one word on a strip of paper and tucked it under the cup where it lay in the chest. Mine. Not loud, not decorated, not a fence. A fact. I did one more thing because peace is not passive. I made an appointment at a free housing clinic at the community center. I sat across from a volunteer attorney who looked younger than my son and wore a tie with sailboats. I told him the outline and waited for him to tell me I was being dramatic. He did not. He said, "Do you have a written lease with your brother?" I laughed. He did not. He said, "Good. Keep it that way." He slid me a list. Fair housing rules, entry notice requirements, template clauses. "You owe no one a free apartment," he said gently, as if he needed me to hear it twice. "Not even your brother, especially not your brother." I walked out into late light with photocopies that felt heavier than paper. I bought a plain ivory mug at the thrift store on the corner because I wanted a thing that belonged to this season that had no shared history with anyone else. I washed it at home and put it where the chipped cup had been. The new handle did not know my hand yet. That would come. Grief had its time. I let it. I cried the way a roof might leak in a sudden storm, steady, messy reel. Then I wiped my face, made a sandwich, and ate it at the table with both feet on the floor. That, too, is a form of resolve. I posted the listing again with a small note, open house Saturday, 10 to noon. The teacher with new glasses returned with a folder of references and a steadiness I could feel across the room. She asked about heat bills, insulation, the snow route for the city plows. She put her palm to the wall and smiled when the radiator pinged. "I like honest houses," she said. "They tell you when they're working." A man arrived who wanted to pay cash and skip a lease. He said he could be helpful around the place and told me my eyes looked tired. I walked him out with a polite tone I learned at the clinic for people who think familiarity is charm. A couple came who had been priced out of the fancy apartments downtown. They listened without interrupting. When they left, they picked up their toddler's cracker crumbs from the mat without being asked. That moved them high on my list. Between showings, I stood in the kitchen and let myself savor what was happening. I was choosing. I was honoring what the house needed and what I needed. It felt like tightening a bolt and having the frame stop rattling. The phone rang that afternoon. My mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was warm milk and warning mixed. "Sweetheart, we're coming by later with Mark to finalize plans. Unless there's something you need to say." There was no bite in her voice. She didn't need one. The shape of the sentence did the work. I set 2 cups on the counter. The ivory mug for now. The chipped one from the chest for later, a companion, not a tool. I laid the binder open to the deed. I slid the housing clinic handout under the clear sleeve of the cover, where it could glare up like a warning label. I wrote a sentence on a card and placed it at my seat where I could see it if my voice began to wobble. You are not being cruel. You are being clear. They came near dinner time. Mark had the kids in the car watching a cartoon with the sound down, like this was a quick errand before burgers. My father took my chair without asking. My mother looked around like a realtor preparing a pitch. Taryn stood behind Mark like a shadow that knew the shape of this script. We're ready to move boxes Friday, my father began. Unless you decided on the trust option, that would make this simpler. I looked at the card. I breathed in 4 out 4. No to both, I said. No to free. No to the trust. The unit is listed. I am choosing tenants who can and will pay. If Mark and Taryn would like to apply like everyone else, they may. It will be a written lease. Standard deposit. Market rent. My mother blinked. This is not what we expected. I know. That's why I wrote it down. My father leaned back. We raised you better than this. You raised me to work. This is the money my work makes. Mark stepped forward, then finally mouthed a line I recognized from boyhood when he was told to share a toy he thought he deserved to keep. We just thought, he said, unless you want a family war, you do what's right. I felt heat go up my neck. I let it pass. I am doing what's right for me. I want peace. A lease creates peace. Free creates debt you will never repay. I am not signing up for that story. No one spoke. I could hear the cartoon in the car through the open window, a jingle that was both happy and relentless. Finally, Taryn said softly, we can't afford it. I hear that, I said. It doesn't change what I can do. They left without touching anything. I sat in the chair my father had taken and looked at the spot where the light made a square on the table. My hands shook hard. After a while, they stopped. I took the chipped cup from the chest and set it beside the ivory one. Break and repair, past and present, both mine. The duplex filled in before the leaves turned. The teacher with the steady questions got the keys. We signed by the mailbox. She brought a plant as a housewarming gift and a handwritten